It was a lovely summer day in 2019, so Colin Dowler set out on a bike ride in the woods. Little did he know, he would end up being dragged by a grizzly bear, fighting for his life. Hit that like button to help this video get to 10K likes. Today, we're going to tell you the story of Colin Dowler and his horrifying encounter with one of the most lethal animals in the wild. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Located in British Columbia, Mount Doogie Dowler, also known as Dogtooth or the Cowboy's Hat among locals, is quite a popular climb. Those who have reached the top claim that watching the sunset over Vancouver Island from that vantage point is quite magical. In the summer of 2019, Colin Dowler set out to explore one of the potential hiking routes to climb this mountain, when he would have a chance encounter he would never forget. As he was cycling down a logging path, Colin came around a corner, only to spot a grizzly bear, and it was staring right at him. The grizzly was about 9 feet long and weighed 350 pounds. Now we ask you, what would your first thought be at that moment? Let us know in the comments. As an avid hiker and outdoor adventurer, Colin had encountered a few black bears in the past, so he knew that usually if you stay quiet, well, the bear will just go on their merry way. However, this was a grizzly bear, and it was focused entirely on Colin. At that point, Colin decided to get off his bike. The grizzly bear wasn't moving, so he thought that was the safest move. All the while, Colin was watching the bear out of the corner of his eye. But as Colin started moving off his bike, the grizzly bear started slinking towards him. In just a few moments, the beast was only a few feet away from him. The grizzly bear was almost past his bike when it suddenly made a 180-degree turn directly towards Colin. Colin reacted quickly and he spun around to put the bike between him and the bear. He also got his hiking pole out as the grizzly bear moved closer and closer to him. Colin placed the hiking pole between the beast's eyes and pushed back slightly. For a moment, it seemed that they were at a stalemate. But then the grizzly bear moved again. This time, it rolled its head to bite the hiking pole. Colin quickly tossed the pole away, and he took off his bag to throw it to the side so he could be able to move a lot better. At that moment, Colin thought the bear would go for the bag, which is where he had some food. But the beast only sniffed and started prodding him with its paw. Every poke from the grizzly bear got progressively more aggressive, until it lifted its paw higher than before. As one would, Colin thought that movement would cause serious damage, so he reacted by throwing his bike at the grizzly bear. At this, the grizzly bear lunged forward and bit Colin in the ribs. He could feel the teeth of the bear sinking in between his ribs on his left side. It was at that moment that the bear started carrying Colin towards a bush. The grizzly bear carried a grown man in its mouth 30 to 40 feet from where they were standing. Colin felt a crushing pain, and when the bear put him down on the ground, he tried to gouge at the beast's eyes. However, Colin couldn't reach its eyes, so this started a full attack. Colin was thrashing all over the place while the bear started to pin him down, biting at his thigh. The bear actually tore his thigh, causing even more agonizing pain. Colin felt that his hip was very close to being dislocated. The grizzly bear was biting down at his thigh so hard that Colin could hear how the beast's teeth were grinding against his femur bone. Think of the sounds of a dog chewing on a bone. Mentally, Colin thought this was it for him. He would lose his life at the teeth of a grizzly bear, so he started saying goodbye to his wife and kids in his mind. He was also washed over by a pang of immense guilt that he'd taken the trip to Mount Doogie Dowler in the first place. But his mind wasn't as ready to give up as he thought, and he remembered that he had a pocket knife on him. At this moment, he was still being pinned down by the grizzly bear, so he had to use both of his hands to even get the pocket knife out. Now, as you can imagine, it wasn't a large blade. It was less than 3 inches long, so it wasn't much, but it was something. So Colin took a breath and stabbed the grizzly bear in its neck with all the energy that he had left in his body. When Colin let go of the knife, the grizzly bear lifted its head, and as it did, a gush of blood from his thigh splashed onto Colin's waist. The grizzly bear got off Colin and started walking back to his bike. He sniffed at the bike for a moment, and then went back to the bush where the beast had come from in the first place. This was Colin's chance to get away. He was losing a lot of blood very quickly, so he knew there was no time to waste. Colin had to move as fast as possible, and that's what he did. The entire time, the grizzly bear was watching him from the bush. Quickly, Colin cut the sleeve off of his shirt and turned it into a makeshift tourniquet for his leg. When he looked back up, the grizzly bear was nowhere to be found. Colin looked at his watch and saw that it was 12:01 p.m., so he knew that there wouldn't be any loggers on the path until a few hours later. In other words, help wasn't coming anytime soon, so he had to keep fighting. He managed to drag himself to his bike, took a moment to gather his thoughts, and then started pedaling with just one leg. After 45 minutes, he finally found a logger's cabin. He found that the door to the cabin was open, so he crashed into the cabin and yelled for help. Thankfully, there were 5 guys there. And while they were panicking at his entrance, they quickly got up to help. They got a first aid kit to help Colin as they could, and they immediately called 911. They found 60 puncture wounds on his body, and one of them was so large that they could see his kidney. About an hour after Colin got to the cabin, an air ambulance arrived. They immediately gave him 2 pints of blood and then flew him to the hospital. Colin underwent a surgery of over 6 hours, and he would spend 40 days at the Vancouver General Hospital recovering from his wounds. 24 days after the surgery, he was already up and walking. The nerve on his left leg started to heal. This was in January. By February, Colin was able to jog on a treadmill. Later, in September, he would run a half marathon. Going back into the woods would take a lot more effort, though. After such a traumatic event, Colin had a hard time not getting overwhelmed by fear when he was out in nature. However, he was determined to get back out there. So he started using a few strategies, like playing music on his headphones to drown out the sounds of nature. Ever since that horrifying and violent attack, Colin has bumped into other black bears while biking, but yelling at them has discouraged them from getting closer to him. Colin appreciates the fact that O-negative blood donors are a huge reason why he's still alive today. Without the transfusion he received in that cabin, he wouldn't have made it to the helicopter. That's why he often donates blood and encourages others to do the same. Every donation matters. Today, Colin continues to hike and explore as much as he can, never leaving without his pepper spray, just in case. The grizzly bear that attacked Colin was tracked down and put down. It was found with the pocket knife still lodged in its neck. It is worth noting that there are tons of bears in British Columbia. There are up to 150,000 black bears and around 15,000 grizzly bears, so bear sightings and issues are not uncommon. Residents are encouraged to properly store garbage and keep their barbecues clean because bears in the area seem to love human food. That's it for today. What do you think of Colin's incredible survival story? Sound off below, and then join us in the next episode of Wonderbot Animals.